Hey everybody, welcome to Kent with Bent number 131. I still can't believe we've done so many of these.
That's a lot.
It really is. This is Move Along Hovind, which is a title based on one of the best episodes of Star Trek ever filmed, of course, Move Along Home, from Season 1 of Deep Space Nine, which is... It's a classic. If you have access to Star Trek Deep Space Nine, you gotta go watch Move Along Home.
It's quite the episode.
It is. Nothing like it, I think, has ever been and been filmed before. Alright, we have a few things to go through before we actually get started, because Ben Thick Tunicate B2022 dropped in around noon my time to leave a super chat and gift some memberships. So first, the super chat for £10 says, "There once was a man named Hovind, who spews scatology straight from a bovind. Straw men he constructs them, and talks out of his rectum, so now we all have to stand downwind." Thank you very much, Ben Thick Tunicate. And then he gifted 10 Dapper Dinosaur memberships, which went to William Hopkins, Colin Dietrich, Chris McDaniel, Laser Fan, Bits of Morphology Disproves Evolution Rage, Kristen Mills, Cognitive Trifurcation, Yumao himself, and Tyler West. So thank you very much for that. Let's take 10 drinks, because that's one of the drinking rules. If you gift memberships, we take drinks for them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Today I'm drinking gin and tonic.
Yum.
Yeah, well, I figured, you know what? I'm a little tired of rum and beer, which has been pretty much the only things I've been drinking on the show lately. And also, it was a nice balmy, like 20, 21 degrees out today.
Yeah.
So, sorry. Those are communism units, by the way. In freedom units, is somewhere around like 71 or something.
That's more like it.
Yeah. So, all right, we have a couple more things to go through. Let's see. Asta Nihon Shaki is a historical document review. For $4.99 says, Nebraska LB 1330, like AIG, is a massive bag of pelagic tunicates. Alright, we'll take a drink for that too. Alright, that's because another drink trigger is if you do anything in a super chat or a membership milestone chat that implies that Answers in Genesis are a bag of dicks, we take a drink for it. Vandalian 1998 for $5 says, "Your thumbnail just had me thinking about Kent preaching on Deep Space Nine and how Bajoran wormhole religion would be evil." Oh yeah, I'm sure he would hate the Bajoran wormhole religion.
Absolutely.
Phil Chavara, who's been a member for 10 months, says, "When you see Dapper Tuesday stream in Europe," the big smiley. Yes, I know that this is very late in Europe, but I also want to say thank you to Phil Chavara, who got me a couple games on Steam, including Pal World, which I definitely did not sink 44 hours into over the course of like 3 days.
That's a lot.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I did leave it running a few times here and there because, you know, there's some idle mechanics in it that I was like, I'll just leave it open. And then when I come back, you know, my eggs will be ready to hatch or whatever. Fine. But yeah, it is a lot. It did soak up most of my weekend. Anyway, Rosina Keller also says, has been a member for 5 months, is at the tetrapod level, and says, "Hello, I hit a milestone. I hope it's okay." It's absolutely okay. Congratulations on that 5-month milestone. All right. Well, I think that is all of the super chats and milestone chats and gifted memberships out of the way. So with that, we can turn to the intro to this. So for those of you who might be new, Kent with Bent is a show where I, Dapper Dinosaur, and Ben Hovind, no relation, the guy there on the camera in the red hoodie that says
Hello.
Wisconsin, I think. Yes.
Yes, it does.
There you go.
Wisconsin.
That guy is Bent Hovind, no relation. He's the Bent from Kent with Bent. Talk about Kent Hovind videos. For those of you who might not know, this show actually started with Bent and I just watching on Discord from different states in the United States, Kent Hovind debates. And I would comment on why it was all nonsense. This was not long after Bent Hovind stopped being a young Earth creationist and a fan of Kent Hovind's, at least his talking points and what.
It was right after.
Yep. And so, basically, when the channel started, I was like, well, we could just do this live. Like, that's a thing we could do. We could just do the same thing. Now, we don't do debates much anymore because, basically, whenever the other person who isn't Kent talking is going to be talking, I'm not going to have much to say, and it just keeps playing for a while. I find that boring. So, we now are doing his supposed college class, Creation Science Evangelism. We're on 102, lesson 10 right now. Also, Roasting a Keller for $4.99 says, it still gets me Dr. Dino can't identify a dinosaur skeleton or even name features unique to a dinosaur skeleton. Yeah, when I asked him directly how he could tell if an animal were a dinosaur, he just had never thought about that question before, which is amazingly awesome in all the wrong ways. Oh, poor Kent. Anyway, I have no sympathy for Kent. He's a total asshole. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, it rather quickly evolved into a drinking game. So we have some drinks, and basically, in part, it's just so that I can get through these with my sanity more or less intact, because it helps my brain from just getting extremely angry, because I'm a relatively happy person when I drink, which is nice for me. I wouldn't want to be an angry drunk. That sounds miserable.
It does sound awful.
Like, oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm gonna go get drunk and get pissed off and punch someone. Like, why? Also, Chipfish for $10 says, getting Tutu Fun started early with a Mothra. We'll take a drink for a Mothra because I believe the last way that you guys can get us a drink is if you super chat or milestone chat anything that has one of the kaiju emojis, which are only available for the channel members. We take a drink for that. And yeah, actually, we are already pretty close. Well, not pretty close, but I mean, we're on our way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, definitely. And we have Asa Nihon Shoki is a historical document review for $4.99 says, one could say Kent not knowing what a dinosaur is a theme song worthy level of stupid. Yes, if you heard that song at the beginning of my videos, basically all my videos, except for the first few, yeah, that's a sound clip from my debate with Kent Hovind where I asked him how to identify a body of a dinosaur as such. And he was like, well, I don't know. I never really thought about that. I guess I'd have to look into it. I'm like, okay.
That was such a good question.
I know. Well, it was becoming increasingly obvious to me during the debate that he had no idea what a dinosaur even was. Because I would list out reasons why birds are dinosaurs. And he would like, so you just think that because they're similar. I'm like, no, Kent, they're similar in the ways that make a dinosaur what it is. Right? It's like you saying, like, humans are similar to mammals, what, just because they make milk and give birth to live young and they have a, dentary squamosal jaw joint, and because they have a difference between thoracic and lumbar vertebrae. Yeah, that's exactly why I would think that humans are mammals, because those are the things that make mammals, Kent. Yeah, anyway, so we've already gone through the ways that you guys can trigger drink triggers. I will add the caveat that I know that you can buy 5, 10, 20, or 50 memberships. If you buy 50, I'm not going to sit here and count out 5 drinks. I'm just going to finish this gin and tonic, grab another one, and add 50 to the drink counter. Dr. Don Hogg, xenobiologist at large, who's been a member for 9 months, is at the amniote level, says, Dapper's a gosh darn professional GDP trigger. With exclamation points, some clinking beer glasses, and of course, a Ghidorah, so we drink. Okay, now, most of the drink triggers usually come from Kent. Now, we will drink if Kent says something that's so stupid that I need to cool my brain down, which is almost certainly our most common drink trigger, because, oh boy, does he say a lot of stupid crap. We will also take a drink if Kent Hovind actually gets something factually correct, where he's not just quoting someone who is themselves factually correct. If he's actually the one who had that thought and it was factually correct, or that memory that he's about a correct thing and he says it, we take a drink. We usually end up getting pretty darn generous with that by the end of the evening, so yeah. Like, Kent will say something like, well, you see, this is my left hand. I'm like, yeah, okay, technically that's right. We'll take a drink. Good job, Kent. You got left and right. Because he's wrong about nearly everything he says, even when he doesn't have to be for his stupid ideas to be true. We'll also take a drink if Kent Hovind mentions that political party that was in charge of Germany in, like, the middle of the 20th century that, kind of started a war with the world, if you will, with some other buddies along the way, like Japan and Italy and whatnot. Yeah. So if if he mentions those guys, we'll take a drink. Now, it does not actually have to be technically the Godwin's Law, where you call someone a member of this political party or you compare them to a member of this political party. If he just mentions them at all, we take a drink for it, even though sometimes we call it the Godwin's Law drink. We'll also take a drink if Kent Hovind tells a joke that doesn't land or tells a story that didn't happen. For instance, if he tells a story about how his daughter actually stumped a museum docent with her very surface level questions about geological dating, and that guy then later went to church and became a Christian that day. Yeah, we're probably going to drink for that because that sounds extremely fake. Royland for $2 says, Bent, did you get food? Godzilla. We'll take a drink for Godzilla.
Yes, I did. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I got a lot of oatmeal.
Very nice.
A lot. So I appreciate it.
All right. Let's see. I just lost my train of thought with the drink. Oh, right. Predictions. If it's either Bent or I can predict where Kent is going, where it's not very obvious, we'll take a drink for a correct prediction. We'll also take a drink for ad hominid, which may or may not come up, which is when a creationist confuses what we know about Australopithecus or any other larger genus than, the specimen Lucy, for what we know just based on the Lucy skeleton. So my classic example is if they say, well, we don't know what Lucy's feet look like because the skeleton didn't have feet. It's like, oh, okay, but we have the feet from other members of her species, so it doesn't matter, right? In fact, I believe on my most recent stream on Saturday, I made the comparison like, look, if you found an otherwise completely human skeleton, but it was missing the feet, do you think you would fill in the missing bits with human feet, or would you fill them in with, like, horse feet? I would choose human feet. Kent apparently, and many creationists are like, well, there's just no way to know. It's impossible to say. Also, Strawberry Visible Taxidermic Blue Vein, in what is definitely not their 5th super chat, but YouTube still seems to think it is, says, cooking dinner right now, but I will be listening. Well, thank you very much. I hope that you have a wonderful dinner. Yes. I was lazy, and I heated up some frozen taquitos before this, just so I wouldn't be, like, acutely hungry during the show. I might make a real dinner later. I don't know. All right, we will also take a drink for Trojan Source. If Kent Hovind cites a source and we look it up, and the source not only fails to support his claim, but it actually contradicts his claim, we'll take a drink because that's called a Trojan Source. We will also take a drink if... Actually, if Godzilla or Mothra come by audibly, which might happen, we'll take a drink for that. And I don't know what I'm missing. Oh, there's... Dapper's a professional. If I screw up the production of the show, we will take a drink for that, and I think that's all of them.
I think that's all of them.
All right, if I have forgotten one, I'm sure it'll come up, and I'm sure we'll drink for it anyway, and I'll let you know at the time. Rosina Keller for $4.99 says, the political party the VW conveniently left out of their superb owl history commercial gets a drink. Yes. Yeah, interesting that, huh? The Volkswagen... which was definitely producing parts for some warmongering regime in Germany in the middle of the 20th century. They didn't mention that part about their company history, huh? But then again, I mean, it's not like I expect Hugo Boss to be like, "Hey guys, we totally designed those great SS uniforms." Like, oh, yeah, you did, didn't you? Oops. Anyway. We are ready. Kent Hovind is complaining that basically gills are weird, I guess. It's very confusing. He's making very little sense. He's also apparently pretending that like pharyngeal arches either don't exist or they're not evidence of commonality in embryology. It's very muddled. Which reminds me, I don't have a muddler anymore. I lost my muddler in like a move 2 moves ago. I should get a new muddler.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
If gills are adapted, if fish have adapted gills to live in the water, how did they live before they adapted the gills?
Okay, so I wanted to get this whole sentence in here because I feel like it's going to provide context for what he's about to say next. And we talked about it last time, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. But basically, there are many organisms that do not have dedicated respiratory systems. Jellyfish, flatworms, even some salamanders don't actually have distinct respiratory organs. They're small enough and their tissues are permeable enough that they can simply absorb oxygen directly from their environment, whether it be the water or the air, right through into their tissues. And that's how. If you're small enough, you don't need lungs or gills. Or alternately, if you're just made of thin enough sheets of tissue, right? Because you get like the lion's mane jellyfish, which is like absolutely gigantic, even by like tetrapod standards, bigger than you are. And yet it doesn't have gills or lungs. It just absorbs oxygen into its tissues because its tissues are made of very thin sheets of tissue or cells. So yeah. Oh, Jillian, the Trojan source from the Bible Ren says, "I bet someone would buy you a muddler if you put it on your Amazon wish list." Well, I will keep that in mind and let you know if I add a muddler to my Amazon wish list, which could very well happen very, very soon.
Is it happening right now?
I can't confirm or deny whether or not it is happening right now. I could be typing in muddler for cocktails into YouTube this very second. They're actually extremely cheap. That's cool. Oh, look, for like an extra $1, I could add in a cocktail spoon and stir.
Do it.
Yeah, I think I will. All right. Oh, wrong thing. I guess I did. All right, there it is. It's on the wish list now.
Nice.
Oh, there's a muddler there for $7.60. Well, 59 cents, but whatever. Anyway, yeah. So here we go. More Kent.
You say, "Oh, they didn't live. None of them lived. For millions of years, they all died."
Yeah, Kent, the fact that you think that that's the conclusion of your question, and that you think that no one in apparently evolutionary biology has thought about the fact that the ancestors of fish before they had gills might have needed oxygen, the fact that you think that that's how that works, probably should be enough indication to you that the actual experts who spent decades of their lives doing nothing but studying this question have missed this. Like, that should just right there just tell you that that's not what's going on here. That's not the conclusion that science is reaching here. As a pro tip, if you ever find yourself thinking that all the experts who have spent basically their entire adult lives focusing on one narrow aspect of science have missed some obvious point, but you, sir, have figured it out yourself, you and your little amateur brain there, and they just have not figured that out, and it's some very obvious thing, and haha, all the experts are dumb. There's a very high chance that you're the one who's dumb. It's much, much higher than that they're dumb. Now, maybe they are, but like your first thought should be, hold on, what am I missing? And then you should check. You should ask the experts. Hillhugger, who's been a member for 17 months, says AIGR, repeat 3 times, AIGR, AIGR, a sly sack of soggy sausages. Thank you very much. We'll take a drink. Here we go.
That's real brilliant, right?
I always say I'd like to have. I had a few people I'd love to throw in the lake and keep them down there for a few million years and see if they.
Sure, toss them in, see if they can adapt some gills real quick. Yeah, sure, I've met a few like that.
Well, interestingly enough, turtles have adapted to use cloacal breathing when they're underwater so they can stay underwater for long. It's not sufficient to keep them underwater indefinitely. But yeah, many turtles have actually adapted their cloacas into secondary respiratory organs. So it's not impossible to adapt a new respiratory organ for use underwater. However, if you have perfectly functional lungs that you can use and you can just surface and have, say, a high metabolism like most mammals might, which is, how marine mammals work, then there's not a whole lot of pressure to get a secondary respiratory organ. So probably not going to happen in those groups.
When you have a complex structure like a watch, I have a Casio Databank stopwatch. It holds 300 phone numbers.
Ooh, 300 phone numbers. You know what? This is from the past. It's fine.
It is a calculator. It's a stopwatch. It's an alarm clock. It's a countdown timer. It does not tell time. You have to look at it. But this is an amazing machine.
Oh, that was a joke that didn't land. Take a drink.
This is made of 100% natural products. There's nothing supernatural about this.
You know what? I appreciate Kent understanding this what the word natural means in science.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am so tired of people like flat earthers saying things like, that doesn't count as nature because it's man-made. It's like, that's not what natural means in science. Natural means not supernatural. It means it's not ghosts or gods or demons or angels. So you know what? We're going to take a drink for Kent actually being right about what natural means in science. Because so many people get that wrong. In fact,
Good job, Kent.
it's also like the same thing that people get wrong who are like, oh, I eat all natural food. It's like, oh, so ghosts aren't part of your food? Great. I'm going to go eat some all natural tar and plastic. I mean, in the sense of science, plastic is as all natural as anything else is.
Yeah.
And also, there's no correlation between things that are man-made and things that are harmful. And no correlation between things that are natural and not man-made and things that are harmful. There's plenty of things in nature that will kill you dead, and there's plenty of things that humans have made that will keep you alive for far longer than you normally would be. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There is not a little man inside here running around changing the numbers on the face of the screen.
How do you know, Kent? Were you there? Did you check?
It all works by simple electronics and mathematics and chemistry and physics. There's nothing supernatural about this.
Okay. Sounds a whole lot like a cell. Right? A cell works on the basis of just normal old chemistry and mathematics. Well, the mathematics cells describe the chemistry, right? It's not built into the cell. It's just an automatic product of the universe being something that can be well described by mathematics. But yeah, that's exactly how cells work, Kent. So I don't know where you're going with this.
However, this watch is more than just the components. It's more than just plastic and metal and, copper wiring and silicone chips.
It's probably silicone chips, not silicone chips, but hey, you know what? Lots of people mix up silicone and silicon. They're very similar. So that's okay.
It's intelligence. It's design.
Well, no, it was designed by an intelligent person, or more likely a team of intelligent people. But it's not itself intelligence or design. You can't just pick up a watch and say, I am now holding intelligence and design in my hand.
What is he talking about?
Oh, he's just going to compare the fact that this is a complex interacting set of parts that are formed of natural material, and then compare that to say, well, it's also so is a cell, and cells have to be intelligently designed because this complex object was intelligently designed. Which is not going to follow, and we'll talk about it when he gets there, and we'll also drink for a correct prediction when we get there. Oh, yep. Donald Jaramillo points out, and plastic is 100% organic. This is true. Yep, all plastic is organic. Completely organic. Let's see. Rosina Keller from 499 says, mammalian enteral ventilation ameliorates respiratory failure by Okabe R. et fam. I like et fam. That's a nice replacement for et al. Goodness. Yeah, pretty good. Actually, that reminds me. You know what IBID period means in a list of sources, right?
Mm-mm.
It means like see the above source, right? And if you have a whole string of them, it just means you have to go all the way up to the top source, and it's the same source all the way down. So like at the top of the page, I cite like some paper, and I want to cite like 4 more times on that page, I can just type in .ibid, my list of sources. Well, H.P. Lovecraft, of all people, wrote a satirical essay about the great Ibidus, a wonderful Roman scholar who wrote on just so many different things, and it was to poke fun at students that one of his professor friends had, who would just cite their sources as Ibid because they looked at an actual book that was citing a real source, didn't know what the abbreviation meant, and then just put it in their own citation.
Oops.
Yeah, it's also similar to when what was it? Matt cited Nathaniel Jeanson's book Replacing Darwin as Jeanson et al., whatever year it was published, because he doesn't know what et al. Means, because there is no second author on that. Because et al. Means and others. So he just
Why did he do that?
He just thinks it's something you put at the end of your sources. Just means this is a fancy source, I guess. Yeah, it's amazing when things like that happen.
And your body is more than just chemicals. It is designed. It reflects intelligence. Intelligent.
I mean,
Sure.
that's your conclusion, Kent. You need to do more than just point to some one thing that is designed and then say, and so was your body. Because the thing is, some things were designed and some things weren't. And you can't just point to things that were designed and then leap from there to, therefore everything is designed. Now, I want to point out, I just had a confirmed prediction, so we're going to take a drink for it. And also, I do believe that we are still currently on pace for another 2-2.
Nice.
Yep. So if we keep it up, we might have a 2-2.
Design. Walter Brown's real good. He says, evolutionists argue against design using arguments they designed. Think about that one.
Okay, I'm thinking about it. People have to think up ideas.
It's not funny.
Yeah, I'm going to take a drink for that being extremely dumb and also not funny. Yeah, Eddie McCoy, I probably did echo for just a second there. Sometimes I get picked up on Ben's mic. It happens. Actually, we were just having a conversation about that earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well.
That's pretty good. A great book to read on this topic would be Darwin's Black Box.
That's by Michael Behe. It is, it's an atrociously dumb book that was debunked before it even came out, because the main thesis of it is that, look, these things couldn't have evolved. But by the time it was published, numerous papers on the evolution of every single one of his examples had already been published, showing plausible evolutionary pathways for the evolution of all of them from simpler precursors. Yep. And when Michael Behe then later went on to be a star witness for the defense in Kitzmiller v. Dover in favor of intelligent design and being able to include it in the classroom, when he was asked by the opposing attorney whether or not he was aware of any research indicating that, in fact, the examples in his book could, in fact, have evolved and did, in fact, evolve, he was like, not that I'm aware of. At which point the attorney produced a gigantic stack of printed papers he slapped on the witness stand and said, these are all peer-reviewed papers detailing the evolution of the various items in your book. You weren't aware of any of these when you published your book? And he said, no, I didn't see them. Yep, that's Michael Behe. And also, unfortunately, this live stream has since been deleted by the person who hosted it. But when I once got to talk to him on a live stream on an apologist's YouTube channel, and I asked him if he thought that intelligent design would count as science now, all these years later, so that it could pass the test proposed, or, well, put forth by the judge in Kitzmiller v. Dover, he said no. And also, Vishanti points out, see design proponentsists with a Mothra, so we'll take a drink for the Mothra, and I'll just tell you what that whole thing is. So Jillian Trojan sourcing the Bible friend says the 7-year-old wants you to know that he says, yay for evolution. That's awesome. Keep going with that. So the C design proponentsist thing, which is what Vishanti membership chatted. So in that same thing, one of the pieces of evidence put forth by plaintiffs in Kitzmiller v. Dover was that the book The Panda's Thumb, which was the intelligent design textbook that the Dover School District wanted to introduce to their schools, was just a copy-paste from an earlier explicitly creationist book that talked all about God. And one of the examples that they gave of this was that in Discovery they had received documents that were previous drafts of the Panda's Thumb. And one of them had C design proponentsists, because the only big difference between that draft and the previous draft of the just completely creationist book was that they replaced the word creationists with design proponents and design proponents. But they had failed to actually completely delete creationists before they did that. Like, they selected only part of the word and then typed in design proponentsists, leaving C design proponentsists. And also they copy pasted out the word like God with designer or the designer. And that was it. That was the big change they did to make this book totally not creationism and just actually intelligent design, a perfectly scientific hypothesis, mind you. Yeah. Yeah. So, can you see why maybe every time creationism is tested in the courts, it actually loses, unlike what Kent says it would happen? Yeah.
Any honest court of law.
Oh, it was of pandas and people, says Billabunk. Yeah, no, I think you're correct about that. I'm sorry about that. Yep, that's a mistake. Look, this is live, and I do not know what we're about to talk about. So, yeah, I make mistakes like that. Please call me out if you see that. So, yeah. Uh-oh. The muddler is still on the wish list.
Uh-oh.
Michael Behe's a biochemist, and he goes into the complexity of things. It's a fascinating way he wrote the book, too. He wrote it in, each chapter has 2 sections. Those who just want to get the simple idea is first, and then if you want all the details, the rest of that chapter is the go down deep, stay down long kind of stuff. Where you
Is that it? Was that a sex joke?
I think so. I'm not sure he realizes it, but I think it was.
Okay, maybe I just have my mind in the gutter.
Maybe.
Okay, well, we'll keep going.
You can just skip that if you want and go to the next chapter. For instance, he takes an entire chapter describing the hair on a bacteria.
It's a flagellum. Take a drink.
I think Kent knows better.
So flagellum isn't just a hair, right? That's the cilia. And one of the reasons you can tell is just the etymology of the words. Where cilia comes from a word that basically means hair. Flagellum comes from a Latin word that means whip. You ever hear the word flagellation? Or the act of whipping something or someone? Yeah, it comes from the same root word as flagellum. It's a whip. The reason it's not just some hair is because it actually whips around like a rotary motor propelling the bacterium. So, no, it's not just a hair. But anyway.
A bacteria has a little hair on it that whips around and makes it swim through the water, or through its little world.
I mean, it's going to be water. Bacteria can't use those whips in air, and it's not like they live in a lot of things that aren't one of those things.
That hair has basically a rotary engine at the bottom that spins.
Mm-hmm.
That hair has 40, that rotary engine has at least 40 different parts to it. What's the minimum number of parts to get an internal combustion engine to work?
I have no idea.
And I don't know why it matters.
Yeah, I don't know either. Because this also is not an internal combustion engine. This actually runs on ATP, which is, how cellular functions usually work. Although it would be interesting if there were bacteria with tiny little internal combustion engines that were like setting on fire tiny like 2 molecules of diesel or something.
You have to have a piston, you have to have a connecting rod, a crankshaft, a wrist pin, something to hold the explosion, a head, valves to let it in, valves to let the exhaust out, a spark to set it off, some kind of electrical system. I would say if you look at a little tiny remote control airplane engine, for instance.
Aren't those usually electrical? Look,
I think so.
I'm not a big like RC enthusiast, but if someone in the chat is, because we have a lot of people in the chat. Although I noticed that only 50 of them have hit like, despite the fact that 114 people are watching.
Oh, no.
Which means I like less than half of you, half as well as you deserve. You got Bilboed. You broke our streak.
Wow.
We had a 5-stream streak of no getting Bilboed, and then everyone broke it.
Oh, no.
That counter goes right back to 0. You hate to see it. Where was I? Oh, right. Talking about internal combustion engines. I forgot where I was. Oh yeah, RC planes. Yeah. So if any of you are like an RC plane enthusiast, please let me know if those things actually use internal combustion engines or if they use electrical engines, because
I'm pretty sure most of those are battery powered.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Very small, very simple. 1 cylinder. Doesn't even have the valves. It just has a port. Piston goes down, sucks gas in, squeezes it, throws it out, sucks in new gas. So you've eliminated the valves. Okay. What is the minimum number of parts you could get to have an internal combustion engine work? I don't know what it is, but it's probably...
Why are you... Oh my goodness, Ken. Why is this what you're talking about then? I was expecting you to have an answer for this question, because otherwise, what is the point of it? I'm taking a drink. Goodness.
Yeah, me too.
Asa Nihon Shoki is a historical document review for $4.99. Says, yeah, all my dad's RC was electric. The rockets weren't, though, with a Godzilla, so we'll take a drink for the Godzilla. Yeah, that's what I would have expected, really, is that they would all basically be electric. I have trouble seeing what the point of a tiny internal combustion engine would make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, it's not impossible, I guess, but, like, it just seems really weird. Okay.
around 100. Minimum number of parts. If you remove
100? Dude, you didn't even list that many.
I'm not sure he listed 10.
Yeah, no. I'm very confident that depending on how exactly you define part, you could get to well under 100 parts on an internal combustion engine. Because let's see, we need like a rotary system so that the piston can go up and down. That's one. We need a piston. We need a connecting pin between them. That's 3. We need a combustion chamber. That's 4. We need intake and outlets. That's 5, 6. And then we do need some kind of ignition system. So that's going to be. I mean, you're probably going to need an actual gap for the electricity to spark across. So that's 7. You're going to need leads going in and out. So that's going to be 9. And then you're going to need some kind of power source, but that can be as simple as just battery. So, yeah, 10. I think that you could probably make a 10-part internal combustion engine. Maybe we'll add in bearings, so we'll up it to like 11. Get a nice bearing in for the rotary part so that it doesn't wear itself out. And then to get the energy out, I guess we'll also need like a shaft going out of it. So I guess up to 12. We're up to 12. 12, I think, is a pretty reasonable number for how many parts you could have an internal combustion engine. Yep. And Donna Lang just joined the channel at the tetrapod level. Everybody, send tetrapods and or sessile, but not pelagic tunicates bent. I can tell you're going to send pelagic tunicates. Don't do it.
I'm not doing anything.
I don't believe you. I see that look of
now I'm doing
evil in your
something.
eyes. Oh my goodness. Roasting a Keller for $4.99 says, and we've narrowed down the number of genes required for a viable synthetic cell to about 400. Yeah, no, that is also something that's been done. How dare you, Bent?
It was a mistake.
From
Big
now
mistake.
on, we're
Huge.
doing Kent without Bent. That's what we're doing. No more Bent. Let's get rid of Bent here. Where's the window with Bent? There. No more Bent. They can't even hear you, Bent. You're muted and invisible. So take that. You're back.
Oh, shut.
You're back because I realized that this show is called Kent with Bent, and if I just get rid of you in the middle of it, it can't really be called that anymore.
Yeah, and you're stuck with me.
Yeah.
move any one of those parts,
But hey, if the chat gives me $1 trillion today, I will totally buy off your house. Or, well, not buy off, but pay off your house. That's what I meant.
Thank you.
So chat, you're... Okay, I'll be honest, you're pretty far away from $1 trillion, but we can do it. I believe in you.
it stops working. In Behe's book, he talks about the mousetrap as an example. There are 5 parts that are required. If you take away one of those parts, it doesn't catch the mice. It doesn't work.
That's actually not true. You can actually make mousetraps with far fewer parts that are still all parts of the original mousetrap. For instance, you can take away the base easily by simply attaching those parts to the floor. Now, would I recommend doing so? No, but you can use it to make a simpler mousetrap. You can also leave out various things like the bait. You don't need to actually have the bait. You don't even technically need to have the pressure plate that triggers the mousetrap. You can just have it so that eventually the spring just kind of snaps and falls down. And sure, usually it won't catch a mouse, but it might. There's a lot of ways to simplify the mousetrap. He was actually just wrong about the irreducibility of the complexity of the mousetrap.
And he challenges people, would you please try to design a mousetrap that has a spring, a hammer mechanism to hit the mouse, a latch mechanism to hold it back, a platform to nail it to, and staples to hold it down. He says this is...
I mean, that's already been designed. I don't understand the challenge. Does Kent mean design one that doesn't have all of those things?
We said that did have them. So
Yeah, but
unless he misspoke.
I think he must have misspoken because, like, that doesn't make any sense because that's just a mousetrap.
Yeah.
Like, design a mousetrap that's just like any other mousetrap. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just copy this mousetrap.
I'll just buy a mousetrap.
Right? Like, I don't. Yeah.
is called Irreducible.
Oh, Snorefoot, who's been a member for 15 months and is at the amniote level, says AIG is a bag of swaying behemoth tails. Take a drink for that. Goodness, I'm actually kind of low on this drink. I'll have to get a second drink before the hour mark.
Uh-oh.
Complexity. It has 5 parts. They all depend upon each other. You cannot take any one away without it ceasing to work. One atheist
I mean, you can, though. That's the thing. You can.
wrote him a letter and said, "You're so dumb, I can reduce it to 4 parts. I can nail all those pieces to the floor."
Oh, hey, that's what I said. Shipfish for $5 says, if not money for the house, at least money for the mortgage/rent. Yeah, that is more likely. Is that this money goes towards mortgage and or rent, or and rent, than that it goes to completely paying off the house. But I will. If I get $1 trillion, I will totally pay off Ben's house for him, and then get myself a very nice house.
I appreciate it.
I'm a very generous
trillionaire.
Yeah, I would be a very generous trillionaire. I mean, honestly, if I got like $500 billion, I'd still probably do it.
Probably, but not definitely.
Not definitely. Well, I haven't made the promise yet. But if I became a 500 billionaire, I'd probably pay off the house. I mean, it wouldn't be a very large percentage of my money.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, duh, you just enlarged your platform is all you did. You didn't take away the platform.
You did, though, right? Because a platform is its own part that provides the functionality of mobility for the mousetrap. Like, it adds something to the mousetrap, but it's not the thing that makes it fundamentally work. So if you say, oh, well, yeah, you could take it away and then just rely on the environment, which is essentially what you're saying, yeah, that's a thing in evolution, too, right? You can rely on the environment. So, for instance, plankton. Like, the defining characteristic of plankton is that they cannot swim against currents. So how do they spread around the world? Well, they use the currents. That's how they get places. You can't say, well, then they actually can swim against the currents. They just use the current. Like, no, that's exactly what that means. They don't have the ability to go against the currents. So they just use the currents to do things that most things do with their organs that have the ability to swim against currents. Okay, great. It's or like saying, hey, Bent, did you know that you are susceptible to scurvy?
Oh no.
Yeah, but have you ever had scurvy?
No.
Well, then you didn't actually have anything taken away. It's not like it's when your ancestors lost the ability to make their own vitamin C, not they didn't really lose anything because they didn't all get scurvy because they had vitamin C in the environment. Yeah, that's not how that works.
People got scurvy?
Well, yeah, but that was later.
Yes, it was.
They get pretty desperate. The idea of complex things that you can't reduce it anymore, it just simply stops working. Now, how many parts on your car have to be there to make it work?
I don't know. Here's the thing about irreducible complexity, guys. There are a few different varieties of the irreducible complexity argument, right? Irreducibly complex organs or structures or proteins or whatever is this concept that can be applied at like multiple levels of biology, from organismal to organs to all the way down to like cell parts to individual proteins, right? The idea is that you have a system of multiple interacting parts such that the removal of any one part causes the system to cease functioning. Okay. Here's the problem with that. Those things have been observed evolving in real time, in real organisms, in the wild, as well as in labs. So we know just based on actual regular old observational science, the kind that Kent Hovind and Ken Ham love, that these things can and do evolve, right? So it's not a valid argument because it has already been observed happening. You can say, well, I don't know about all the theory that could explain that. I don't care. It happens, right? It would be like telling someone who doesn't understand how lightning forms that therefore lightning doesn't form because they don't understand it. I've seen lightning. It's a real thing.
Yeah, me too.
Could I tell you exactly how it forms? Actually, I don't think anyone can. I'm pretty sure that the exact formation mechanism for lightning is still under investigation. Crush with a Croxagore for $5 says, hey, Dapper, I thought you were paying me to build you a step pyramid. Also, I may be an expert in catching particularly large rodents. No, I wondered how much it would cost and how quickly you could build a step pyramid. I didn't actually sign any contracts for you to build a pyramid. And I made that question based almost entirely on the fact that you have the screen name of someone who was biologically engineered through intelligent design to build step pyramids, because that's what Croxagores are. They are genetically engineered giant construction lizards, or crocodilians, or something. Reptiles.
I don't know that.
Yeah. It's from Warhammer Fantasy.
Mm.
Yeah, in Warhammer Fantasy, the lizard men, as well as the elves and the humans and I think the dwarves, are actually the like intelligent design of a race called the Old Ones, who also appear in Warhammer 40k. So,
Nice.
yeah, which is why there's the conspiracy theory that the Warhammer world is actually a planet in the Milky Way galaxy of 40k that's cut off from the rest of the galaxy by like warp storms or something, and therefore Sigmar is actually one of the lost Primarchs. Anyway, here we go.
Lots, right? How many can you take away to make it stop working? Any one of many thousands of parts, like the key, right?
Actually, there are a lot of cars now that don't need keys, but that's okay.
Ignition,
The ignition isn't a part, Kent. It's a number of different parts.
oil, the gasoline. My dad, when he was in Marines in World War II,
Rustin Keller asked if I ever conflate the real world with 40k. I try not to.
he was in radar, and they would have to go into the islands after they took them from the Japanese, and they would set up radar bases. And one of the things they did for their training was, since this radar was operated by a diesel engine, their boss would sabotage their engine to make it stop working. And they had to see who could figure out what was wrong and fix it in the fastest amount of time. They would do all sorts of things to these engines. Of course, you pop off the distributor cap and run a pencil around the inside and put it back. Pencil lead is graphite, which conducts electricity, and the spark goes to all the cylinders all the time. Well, it doesn't run.
Okay, but Kent, that's an internal combustion engine with multiple cylinders. Remember when you were talking about the smallest possible combustion engine? That's a single cylinder engine. You don't actually need multiple cylinders if you don't need that extra power. You can have a one-cylinder engine. It'll work. So, yeah, this is very stupid. And of course, one of the things that all of his examples have in common is that none of them are biological organisms that can reproduce, unless I'm wrong. Now, I've never been a radar operator, but you guys in the chat let me know if you are aware of any radar stations that were able to produce little baby radar stations that were similar to themselves, but subtly different in a few different ways that affected their ability to subsequently create more little baby radar stations.
He said the toughest one he ever had to find, they took a needle, took two spark plug wires that were touching each other, poked the needle through, and clipped it off and roughed up the rubber. So when it sent the spark to one, it sent it to two cylinders. And it ran terrible. And it took them a long time to figure out why. It was a little tiny needle stuck between two.
Savage, perpetual motion lungs, Cobra. Oh, that's great. For $2 says, I had a car with a broken heater. It still drove. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not surprised. In fact, I'll bet it still actually was somewhat warm because, engines get hot. Also, this kind of reminds me of like a troubleshooting thing that happened to me in the Navy where we had a high vacuum alarm that was always in when we were trying to go out away. And the mechanics and the electricians were all running around trying to figure out why this thing was in. Everyone had like all the circuit and piping diagrams out and everything. And because, the vacuum meter said that the vacuum was absolutely fine. There was no problem with the vacuum. This is for a condenser, right? So the way a ship engine works is you just shove really hot steam over a turbine, and then it spins the engine, right? Okay, well, then that steam goes down into a condenser to turn back into liquid water to be pumped back into the boiler. And so I knew that we had recently just reinstalled the alarm sensors and that they had a little connection down through the deck to the condenser that was just a hollow tube that was connected with a little screw, like hand screw-on thing that you would tighten them onto each other. And so I was like, we just replaced those. I bet someone didn't tighten it down all the way. So while everyone's like, oh yeah, we have to go figure this out, we're going to start half splitting and do this whole thing, I just wandered down to the deck that the sensor was on. I tightened it, and the alarm went out. And I went back up and was like, I got it, guys. I'm like, how did you do that? How did you know it was wrong? Like, well, we just replaced them. I figured someone just hadn't tightened it down. I was right. I'm like, but you didn't follow the procedure. I'm like, yeah, okay, do you want me to go loosen it? No. All right, then, let's go.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'll show him.
It reminds me of the time I also one time opened up a salinity sensor, and the guy who was there, Chief James, wanted to go through the whole troubleshooting procedure. And I'm like, this contact is encrusted in salt. I bet that's the problem. He's like, yeah, but we have to follow the procedure. Like, all right, test this lead. And so I didn't. I tested the lead that was corroded. And I was like, oh, hey, I found it open. He was like, oh, wow, really? Already? I'm like, yeah, but, oh, I think I tested the wrong one. Oh, no, we didn't follow the procedure. Do you want to go back through the whole procedure? Or do you want to just replace this lead? What do you want to do, Chief? It was like, well, I don't like that we didn't follow the procedure, but okay, we'll replace this one. I'm like, okay, cool.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, look, the troubleshooting procedure in the military, sometimes it's good when you don't know what the problem is, but sometimes the problem is just right there, and like you should just fix the problem. Anyway, Asta Nihon Shaki is a historical document review for 499 says, Kent really thinks we live in Stargate Atlantis or something and have race ships. Joke, yes.
Spark plug wires. And there are so many things you can do for cars. When people get married, you know, you run the coil wire up onto weave it through the fabric of the seat, in the driver's seat. You know, when they hit the key, they get 20,000 volts in the gluteus maximus. We better not.
Hey,
Why
don't
would you do that to
sabotage your
someone?
friend's car because they got married. That's a really big dick move. You're gonna play pranks on someone who's getting married. Play pranks that have like, you know, low costs to recover from and that aren't hazardous. Messing with someone's car is hazardous. Don't do that, right? Like, do something less harmful, like, I don't know, replace their sugar with salt. So when they go to make their coffee, it tastes terrible. Oh no! Oh, you lost a cup of coffee, whatever. That reminds me of the time I wanted to put some vanilla extract into a cup of coffee, and I grabbed the bottle of soy sauce instead. And I took a sip of that, and I was like, oh!
Whoops.
That is not what I was expecting.
That
wasn't
sounds
that long
awful.
ago either. That was pretty recent. It was a
I
couple months
remember
ago.
when you did that.
Yeah. I was like, oh, this is terrible.
Teach you guys all that stuff. Anyway, when they let go of the key, though, it stops. And they wonder, what's going on here? But this little, excuse me, this little motor on this hair on this bacteria has at least 40 parts.
That actually sounds low to me, but I guess it depends on how you count.
If you take
I
any
thought
one
you
away,
needed 100.
Well, I mean, it's not an internal combustion engine, so there is that, which is one of the weird things. Like, I don't know why we went to internal combustion engine, but
Then why did he bring it up in the first place?
yeah, there's no good reason.
it stops working. So how did the individual parts evolve? And how did the bacteria know when it had 35 parts? Man, if I can just get 5 more, this thing's going to start working.
Okay, so that's actually a really good question, because it's not obvious, and there is, in fact, an answer. And the answer is that actually, the bacterial flagellum evolved from an excretory system, which shares almost the exact same protein structures. And this excretory system is not similarly irreducibly complex. And it is used to basically take waste from the bacteria and shed it to the environment at cost to the bacteria. It takes energy to do this. And there's this thing called exaptation. Now, exaptation is a big fancy word that basically just means that you start using something for a new purpose for which it did not evolve. So, for example, penguins have wings, right? If you look at the internal anatomy of a penguin forelimb, it's a wing, complete with the same bone fusions and the same ordering of bones and everything as you see in a normal bird wing. But it's actually completely immobile. It all moves as a single unit from the shoulder. None of the other joints can move at all. The elbow can't bend, the wrist can't flex. And that's because penguins use their wings as paddles underwater, which means that they took something that originally evolved for flying, and now they use it for locomotion under the water. You can see other things, right? So, for instance, boid snakes, which is the group to which like pythons and boas belong, they actually retain hind limbs, but they don't have a knee or an ankle. There's just a spur of bone and a single digit with a claw. Doesn't have any joints except at the hip. And they use them to help maneuver their mates so that their cloacas can align with each other. And the male will actually use one of his little spurs to sometimes lift some of the scales near the cloaca so that he can, copulate with the female. That's using legs as basically a open up honey mechanism for making snake babies. It's not what those legs evolved for. They evolved so that the lizard that the snake evolved from could run around, because Yes, snakes are lizards. Yeah, that's an example of exaptation. So this excretory system was exapted into a propulsion system after numerous things evolved, in some cases for excretion purposes, and then also a few other things as, like hairs that would less effectively move. And then a mutation could happen that just combined them. And we actually see things like this all the time, right? We have examples in even things like the Linsky long-term E. coli experiment, in which we are observing these populations of bacteria every day, taking samples, sequencing genomes, checking their phenotypes. And we've seen them evolve things that required irreducible complexity, where multiple different mutations had to all happen for a new function to happen. And it happens anyway. No, not bovid snakes, Command Cyborg. Boid snakes. You got to get rid of the V. B-O-I-D. Goop23, who's been a member for 19 months, says, snake babies or snabies? I mean, if you want to shorten it to snabies, I will not stop you.
How did it know?
It didn't.
There's no way it could know.
That's true. We'll take a drink for that. That is technically true.
There's no way it could know.
It didn't need to. It evolved an excretory system. It evolved a little bit of a shake this filament around system. And it just had a mutation that pushed them together. And then from there, it could refine these proteins to better serve a mobility function rather than an excretory. And it could keep the excretory function by simply having duplicates of the genes that controlled the excretory system, which those bacteria still have. Because remember, if you duplicate a gene and now you have 2 copies, one of them is now free to evolve to do a new function. That's also how notothenioid icefish got their antifreeze glycoproteins. It started out as a partial duplication of a trypsinogen gene. Trypsinogen is a chemical that forms trypsin in your pancreas when you're trying to digest protein. It doesn't get stored as trypsin because trypsin is very, very reactive with proteins. And Bent, I think you might know. What are you mostly made up of, aside from water and fats?
Protein.
Yeah, it's mostly proteins. Yep. So if you were, just digesting all the proteins all around, that'd probably be bad for you, right?
That would be bad.
Yeah. So you only want trypsin when you need it. So it's stored as trypsinogen, which is then converted to trypsin. Anyway, so part of that gene gets duplicated, and then it evolves into a glycoprotein that acts as an antifreeze, allowing the notothenioid icefish to inhabit colder waters than their relatives who lack this glycoprotein. And the whole time, they get to keep their trypsinogen gene and keep digesting protein in their pancreas. Hooray!
It's irreducibly complex. By the way, that little bacterium motor is so tiny, 8 million of them, of these motors, would fit in the cross-section of a human hair.
Big number, therefore God, everybody.
Take a hair, cut it, the circle, 8 million of those motors would fit on there.
More if it's a nose hair.
Pretty tiny. And it whips around 100,000 RPM.
Does anything we have today do that? I mean, we can't.
100,000 RPM, I don't know. I'm sure there are some things we have, jet engines, turbines and stuff will go that fast. But like your Suzuki Katana 600 had what, red line of 10,000?
That's true. Yeah.
12,000 RPM?
I didn't know that Eric was into motorcycles this long ago, but I guess it makes sense, because I know he is now. And hey, I'm not going to fault him for that. That's fine. Be into motorcycles. Just be safe. I think he's safe. I believe whenever I've seen him on a motorcycle, he's been wearing a helmet. So, you know what? Good for him.
8 or 9 times faster. And this big. And it goes around so efficiently, it moves its little bacteria through the water, the equivalent of a person swimming 60 miles an hour.
So basically what he means is, like, if you scaled a bacterium up to the size of a human, and it is true, and it's very impressive, especially when you take into account the fact that the viscosity of water at that scale is, for the bacterium, more like the viscosity of peanut butter at a human scale. So, like, yeah, I mean, it's swimming through water at a scale where the viscosity of water is a huge factor, and it's doing so at a very high speed. Oh, there's Mothra. Let's take a drink for Mothra. There we go. And yeah, the bacterial flagellum is very impressive, but also remember, when it first evolved, it didn't have to be that impressive. All it had to do was provide some advantage. So the first bacterial flagella probably were not doing all of it, right? They were probably spinning at a much more sedate few hundred RPM and pushing that bacterium at a much lower rate of speed with a higher energy consumption. but it was still better than not having that option. So Kent is doing something that creationists love to do, which is to compare the simplest version of a thing that we have now, and then say, well, how could that have evolved like that originally? And the answer is it probably didn't. The original flagellum that is the common ancestor of all modern bacterial flagella was probably really crappy compared to the modern flagellum. But it is now at the 1 hour mark, and so we're going to take a drink. I'm going to refresh my drink. We are no longer on pace for the tutu, though.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so we're close to pace for the tutu, though. We could do it. Command Cyborg, who's been a member for 36 months, says, remember to hit like and such, good people, with a smiley face. Also, AIG are a bag of dicks with spaces between all letters and dicks with a Godzilla. Thank you very much. We'll take a drink for that. And wow, 36 months. Oh, yeah, that's true. You just got the silver diaper dinosaur badge.
Nice.
Yep. All right, guys, we'll be back in just a little bit. In the meantime, though, please enjoy the musical stylings of one Ben Hovind. That's you.
That's me.
All right, here we go.
Well, that's me.
Hey, we are back. Welcome back, everybody. And also, Harvey Munshaw for $5 says, Happy Fat Tuesday. In celebration, AIG is a bag of party blowout noisemaker. Very nice. We'll take a drink for that. Yes, it is, in fact, Fat Tuesday. So, let's mention what that is real quick, because this is an educational show. We're going to talk about some holiday history. So, Fat Tuesday, or Mardi Gras, which is just an anglicized pronunciation of the French phrase Fat Tuesday, is the day before Lent starts in Western Christianity. Lent starts at a different date in Eastern Christianity, so that's like the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Oriental Orthodox Church, the Church of the East, those groups of churches. They use a different method. And in fact, this year, Eastern Easter is 5 weeks after Western Easter. It's over a month away from Western Easter, but that's okay. So traditionally, in both Western and Eastern Christianity, the Lenten fast was basically, you basically ate vegan for the entirety of Lent. Now, in the Catholic Church, that has been reduced to just not eating meat, and only on Fridays, and only during Lent. So they've vastly reduced the standard for fasting. But then again, in Eastern churches, where the general fasting rules remain, no meat, dairy, eggs, olive oil, or wine, there's also no idea of enforcing them. It's just that is the standard idea for what a fast is in Eastern Christianity, and you can just observe it or not if you're an Eastern Christian. And if you're ill or elderly or very young, you shouldn't observe it. You should eat much fuller meals because you're not healthy enough to be fasting. And also the idea in both Western and Eastern Christianity is that you're supposed to be saving money on these meals and then giving the money to charitable things like, housing for people who are impoverished, or food banks, or things like that. But if you are, in fact, a medieval peasant who's going to be spending the next, month or so basically eating vegan, there's probably a fair chance that you have a bunch of meat and cheese and eggs around. Not a bunch, but some, right? And if you don't eat it now, it's going to go bad over the course of that month or so. So you eat as much of that stuff as you can before Lent starts, and this is your last day to do it. So this is the day when you make pancakes for breakfast with all the eggs you have, and where you eat cheese and any meat that you have as your big meals throughout the day, which is why it's Fat Tuesday. And yeah, that's where Mardi Gras comes from, is from the fasting rules of Western Christianity. Well, the older fasting rules of Western Christianity. I don't know of any Western Christian groups that still enforce or even recommend those full fasting rules. Let's see. Borg Emporium, who's been a member for 9 months, says, Thanks, Dapper, for the stream today. It made me feel better. Turtle, Pelagic Tunicate, Godzilla, and Pelagic Tunicate. So we'll take a drink. And look, I'm glad to help. Honestly, it's kind of making me feel better today. It's been a weird couple days for me, and yeah, I'm feeling better for this too. Asta Nihon Shaki is a historical document review for $1.99. Says AIG are a bag of name the letter Tau. Is that a Tau? No, that's not a Tau. What is that? I don't even know what letter that is. I don't even know what alphabet that's from. If I recall correctly, I'm going to believe you and take a drink for it. Roasting a Keller for $1.99 says AIG is a sack of one-eyed wonder weasels with a backpack emoji, which is a new one for me. Thank you very much. We'll take a drink for that. Okay, so before we get right back into it, I'm just going to give a quick, maybe slightly truncated version of my normal post-break spiel. I can talk, everybody. I know English. Don't worry about it. My brain is functioning perfectly well. I'm not confusing the countries of Egypt and Mexico like a presidential hopeful did recently.
Whoops.
Yeah, that happened. Anyway, actually, a president, not just a presidential hopeful, did recently. That was a fun little thing. Anyways, yeah, guys, this channel is almost entirely supported through the generosity of my viewers, and I mean that big time, right? The ad revenue that comes in on the channel it's barely a fifth in most months of the channel's income. And that channel income is what helps pay Ben's mortgage and helps do things like make it so I don't starve to death or become homeless, which is a big deal to me. I don't want to do either of those things. So if you are currently not someone who is supporting, but you would like to be, there are a number of ways to do that. There's the Patreon and the channel memberships. Those are the two easiest ways. Patreon starts at just $1 a month, or you can go 15% discount for doing an annual membership. So for less than $11, you can be a member of my Patreon for an entire year. Either way, the channel membership starts at $1.99. There is no annual option. You get better perks at higher tiers. And either way, no matter what tier you are, or whether you're on Patreon or the channel membership, you get early access to about 6 months worth of videos at this point. You get access to the Dapper Dinosaur supporter-only Discord server, which is actually, I think we've grown a pretty nice community in there. We're very welcoming. We're a very friendly bunch. And yeah, sure, every once in a while we get into some kind of argument or heated discussion, but we figure it out and we get over it. If, however, a monthly or an annual thing isn't your deal, but you still want to help, there's always the Amazon wishlist. There's one for me and Bent. Bent also has a Patreon in the description. Bent has all sorts of stuff there. Mostly what I have is a bunch of stuff for like recreation. Like I've got stuff for 3D printing, stuff for RPGs. Most of the stuff that was actually like computer hardware has already been purchased, but if you're feeling absurdly generous, there is a sound recording booth that might help the channel, but it's extremely expensive, so I don't expect anyone to actually get that. And if none of that's right, there's also a merch store. There's a fairly recently added designs to the merch store with the red Mecha Dapper like robot thing on them. There's also my default avatar that you can find there. There's shirts, t-shirts, hoodies, baby onesies, stickers, rugs, pillows, blankets, all sorts of stuff. Towels. No rugs. I don't think rugs are it. Nope. I'm pretty sure rugs are wrong. Sorry about that. But yeah, and if none of that's right, or you just can't afford it, then please don't support. If you can't afford to give me any money, then don't. You're still going to get all my content as it comes out for the public. Just like and share these videos. That goes for everyone. And now we have a few things. Let's see. David B22585 says, or Nikki. Oh, sorry, no, I'm skipping. Thierry, I'm Dapper's GM. You may call me God, Rana. Member for 8 months at the Tetrapod level says, you speak awesome English for a Ceratosaur. You know what? That's fair. David B22585, who's been a member for 18 months, is at the Amulet level, says, or Nikki Haley or Nancy Pelosi. No, it was Joe Biden. In a press conference recently, he accused President Sisi of Mexico he condemned President Sisi of Mexico for not opening the border with Gaza. In case you're wondering, Sisi is the president of Egypt, a country that does share a border with the Gaza Strip, unlike Mexico, which doesn't. Let's see. Also, Savage, Perpetual Motion Lungs, Cobra, and Strawberry Visible Taxidermy Glue Vein both gifted 5 memberships. Let's go through those.
Nice.
They went to Cookies Riot. Prixie, long names are fun. Sub to Dapper Dinosaur for more. My goodness. Autumn Meat, Kent, no relation Halstead. That's awesome. Steve Austin. Jillian Trojan Sourcing the Bible Wren. Mark Rose, Luma, Grey Wolf Coder, Alex Hood, and Sable Eagle. Awesome. Let's take 10 drinks. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where I take a quick break because, okay, that's a lot. Okay. Yeah, we're good. 6, 7. Ooh, the drink is stiffer this time. 8.
Nice.
9. And 10. Okay. Oh, goodness. And then also, Roasted Color for $4.99 says, the president of Egypt, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, is called the Mexican by his Egyptian critics. I mean, that's fair, but he's not the president of Mexico, and he can't open up the border with Mexico. So, I mean, it's still not great. And also, look, I don't want to dog too much on the president. It's not why I'm here. I just am not super happy about the fact that both my choices for president of my country are senile, genocidal octogenarians. It's not one of my things that I'm a big fan of. And I know technically Trump isn't quite an octogenarian. Yeah, he will be by the time he ends his term if he gets elected. So,
Now you get a real serious problem. As an object gets smaller and smaller, the fluid that it swims in feels thicker and thicker to that object.
Hey, that's true. Take a drink.
It's almost like you swimming through peanut butter.
60 miles an hour.
Okay, I don't like that twice now he's used the exact same example I did. I don't like that.
That was, yeah,
I,
exactly what you said.
it's not a drink trigger, but like, and you know what? We're probably both getting it from Behe's book because I've read that book. So, yeah, all right. I don't like it though.
60 miles an hour.
One breath.
One breath? I don't know about the breath part. I don't know. Anyway,
Actually, we're just under pace for getting Bent a free pizza.
well,
Nice.
if that little bacteria can swim 60 miles an hour through its little tiny world, which has extremely high what's called viscosity. Viscosity would be a good quiz question to ask.
Why? But okay, sure, whatever.
Viscosity is the thickness of the water.
I remember I think it was 6th grade, I want to say, maybe 7th. I had a teacher argue with me that the higher the viscosity, the more easily something flowed. And I was like, that's the opposite of how it is. I was like, no, you're just wrong, and you need to stop questioning me on this. I'm like, all right.
Right.
And yeah, no, I double checked, and yeah, no, I was right. It's definitely higher viscosity means less easy flow, more resistance to flow.
If we had a long, tall glass tube full of water and we drop a marble in, it would fall fairly fast. We could time it. Okay?
No?
If we take the same jar, fill it full of honey, drop in the marble, falls much slower.
This
Honey
true.
is
Take
thicker
a
than water.
Drink, I guess.
Alcohol, like rubbing alcohol, is thinner than water. We could drop
Also
the ball
true.
in a tube of alcohol and it would fall faster. That's called the viscosity. They measure motor oils with the viscosity: 30 weight, 40 weight, 50 weight. 90 weight for the rear end of the car is very thick, heavy oil.
So
The-
it's the thickness of the liquid.
The thickness of the liquid is called the viscosity.
Calling it thickness is okay colloquially. It's really the resistance to flow. So yeah, because that's actually something that you can quantify, whereas thickness is just a subjective description, and you can use it comparatively, but you can't really quantify thickness in that way for liquids. And that's probably thick with a C and a K, and not just with multiple C's, in case anyone's wondering.
There's probably a more technical term, the resistance to flow or the resistance to movement or something.
It's happening again! Oh, I hate it so much.
Nice.
But this little
Savage Perpetual Motion Lungs Cobra for $5 says, "Is this an explanation as to how Kent lost his marbles?" Oh, it might as well be.
bacteria has to overcome incredible viscosity problems. And he moves. I mean, I swam a mile one time in Boy Scouts in about 30 minutes.
Maybe.
What's that? How many miles per hour is that?
JMCA Does Lifts, who's been a member for 4 months, says, "Can you say AIG is a bag of insert word here in Klingon and take a drink, please?" So, actually, this is a question that has come up numerous times on the channel, is how to say that, right? So, the first thing you got to make sure that you have is a bag, that's a book. So, then dick. There's not really much slang, so I'm just going to use inshep, which is just the general word for penis. And then I'm not going to try and translate answers in Genesis. I'm just going to leave it as AIG in English. So that would be book inshep och AIG. AIG is a bag of dicks, and here's that drink.
Nice.
All right, Aston Nihon Shoki is a historical document review for $4.99. Says, when I make slime monster characters, thickness is also thickness with C's. Joke. And Godzilla. We'll take a drink. Thank you very much. All right, here we go.
2 miles per hour. He's swimming 60 miles per hour. We need to sign them up for the Olympics. And yet the textbook says we evolved from bacteria. Well, there are lots.
No, the textbook says that we share a common ancestor with bacteria. There's a difference there. We actually share a more recent common ancestor with archaea than we do with bacteria. And there's actually a good argument to be made that eukaryotes are actually a subgroup of archaea, because there are some archaeans that seem to be more closely related to eukaryotes than they are to other kinds of archaea. So really, life is divided into bacteria and archaea, with prokaryota being a grade that all of bacteria exist in and part of archaea exists, making you, in fact, an archaean, technically speaking. So, yeah, it's not the case that we evolved from bacteria.
It's better off than we are. We're getting worse, not better. Charlie Darwin said in his book, to suppose that the eye could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd. Absurd. This is crazy. How can this happen? Even Darwin recognized this is a crazy idea because the eyeball is so complicated.
Okay, everyone ready for a Trojan source here? Let's bring up the origin of species online, because I happen to know that Project Gutenberg contains 3 different editions, the 1st, 2nd, and 6th edition, on their page. And let's just search for I freely confess. Okay, here we go. This is in chapter 6, Difficulties of the Theory, which is one of 2 chapters about difficulties in the theories. Darwin split off difficulties with the fossil record into chapter 10 because it was such a long discussion that he wanted it to be in like a separate entire chapter. So, to suppose the eye with all of its inimitable contrivances for adjusting the focus at different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree. When it was first said that the sun stood still and the world turned around, the common sense of mankind declared the doctrine false. But the old saying of vox populi, vox Dei, which means the voice of the people is the voice of God, as every philosopher knows, cannot be trusted in science. And hold on, I will read this. Eddie McCoy just joined at the tetrapod level. Thank you very much, Eddie McCoy. Everyone said tetrapods and sessile tunicates, pelagic tunicates. Reason tells me that if numerous gradations from a simple and imperfect eye to one complex and perfect can be shown to exist, each grade being useful to its possessor, as is certainly the case, which is basically, yes, we can show that this exists. If further the eye ever varies and the variations be inherited, as is likewise certainly the case, and if such variation should be useful to any animal under changing conditions of life, then the difficulty of believing that a perfect and complex eye could be formed by natural selection, though insuperable by our imagination, should not be considered as subversive of the theory. So was Darwin saying that his theory couldn't account for the eye? No, he was saying quite the opposite. He was saying, even though it seems like this is silly and impossible, it actually isn't. And we can tell because we already have all the steps of the eye already existing in living organisms, and we know that eyes can vary in those organisms and that those variations can be heritable. Therefore, the eye, in fact, is subject to natural selection and can form via natural selection. So, yeah, I'm just going to take a drink for Trojan Source. DM artificially selected Ceratopsian wing for $2 said, send turtles with just so many turtle emojis. Thank you very much.
A lot.
That is a lot, yeah. All right, here we go.
And you go back again to the idea that design demands a designer. Charles Darwin said to many folks, you know, the eyeball confuses me more than anything. He said, I think this will be the undoing of my theory.
That's weird, because in his book, that's the opposite of what he said, Kent. Do you have a source for that, Kent? Any letters we could look at or something? I'm going to go ahead and guess no.
This will be what proves my theory wrong. Well, there's a lot of things that prove your theory wrong, Charlie. Common sense will prove your theory wrong. But
oh my goodness, he didn't provide a source. How shocking. Donald Carneo for $2 says, AIG is a pack of heat-seeking moisture missiles. All right, we'll take a drink for that.
This textbook says, the complex structure of the human eye may be the product of millions of years of evolution. Why doesn't God get the glory for what he made?
If you want to give God the glory for that, I'm not going to complain about it, but that doesn't negate evolution. There's one thing. The second thing is actually, there was a study done in, I believe, the late 90s, called something like a pessimistic estimate for the time frame of the evolution of the eye, or something like that, right? I actually cited it in a video that came up for early access not that long ago. And we're gonna play the more than less than game with orders of magnitude. Bent.
Yeah.
Guess the order of magnitude on which an eye could evolve at a pessimistic level. Like
I don't even know what that means.
Like you say, billions, tens of billions, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's why it's a guess.
Millions.
It's more than that.
Billions.
Less than that.
Hundreds of millions.
Correct. The eye could evolve from scratch.
First try.
And oh wait, no, sorry, did you say millions? Oh, I meant less. I'm sorry, it's only hundreds of thousands of years.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, sorry, that's my mistake. I had the wrong number of things. It's actually about 500,000 years that it takes for an eye to evolve. It's a little bit more than that, so we can just round it to 600,000, or even just a million years, right? Because we like to give a free order of magnitude to creationists. So the eye could evolve in about a million years, and life has been around for hundreds of millions of years, which means that eyes could have evolved from scratch hundreds of times over in the same lineage. The same lineage could have lost and evolved eyes hundreds of times in the time frame that Earth has been around and that life has been on it. And by life, I mean complex animal life. It's about 800 million years. That's how much time we have to evolve eyes. So yeah, actually, it's not really a big problem. Yeah. Now, have eyes evolved that many times? No, there's probably like what 1, 2, 3, 4. Probably a dozen or so times at maximum that eyes have evolved. So, yeah, because once the lineage gets eyes, it tends not to lose very often.
They are quite advantageous.
Yep, even jellyfish have eyes.
Why do we all have to pay for the kids to be taught that eyeballs evolved when there's no possible way it can be happen, and there's no evidence that it happened?
I mean, except for all the evidence, right? Like, even the evidence that Darwin called out in his own book that you cited, Kent. I'm not the one who brought Darwin into this. Kent is. I don't care what Darwin said. Darwin is just some guy who got some things wrong a long time ago. So, yeah, like, this is the more ridiculous claims that Kent has ever made.
So what are they going to do to the kids in this textbook? What they're going to do, they're going to arrange eyeballs of different types of animals in some kind of order from what they think is simple to what they think is complex.
Do you honestly think that Kent could, with a straight face, tell me that, say, a photosensitive patch of skin is not more complex than a camera eye with a movable lens and like a focusing mechanism and a retina? You think? Because like they're obviously more or less complex, right? Like that's simpler than the eye you have, and then like a pinhole camera eye, like a Nautilus has, where there's no lens, there's no retina, but there's a little hole that's small enough that the image that forms can be relatively sharp, if dim. That's intermediate between the two. Like, I know that it's hard to quantify complexity, but do you honestly think that Kent would say that those are equal in complexity? I don't. Maybe he would. I don't know. Maybe
I don't know what he'd say. He's a liar, so he might.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. I guess I should say, do you think he could honestly say?
No.
Oh, I missed 2 super chats. Oh my goodness. I missed at least one. Lion Finish Chapter 1 for $2 says, is Kent getting smarter or is Dap getting dumber? I think Kent's getting slightly smarter. I don't know which other one I missed. Let's see. I got the one from Roasted Keller about the Egyptian president. I got the one from Savage Perpetual Lungs Ocean Cobra about losing marbles. I got the one from JMCA Does Lifts about Klingon. Let's see. I just got the Mind Finished Chapter 1. I got Send Turtles, and I got AIG as a pack of heat-seeking moisture missiles. So I did miss one. If I missed another one, please let me know whose it was and what they said so I can read it out. Yeah. If I did, I'm sorry about that. I don't intend to miss Super Chat. But also, Roasting Keller for $1.99 just said, I worship Darwin for pangenesis. With, what is that emoji? I don't even know what that emoji is. It's a person. I'll give it that. All right, here we go.
Some eye spots on different creatures only sense light. They're just a little sensitive patch. It just tells if it's light or dark. Mm-hmm. That's all they can tell.
That's true. Take a drink.
Okay. Some have extremely good vision, like the eagle can read the newspaper at the other end of the football field. If you could read and you cared what's going on.
I was just about to point out that eagles can't read at any distance, but you know what, Kent? You got there. It was a joke that didn't land, so we're still going to take a drink for it. But at least you recognize that, in fact, eagles cannot read. Unless they're hiding their reading abilities from us because they're plotting a takeover.
I thought all birds were drones.
Well, yeah, ever since Kennedy. But the drones might be planning a takeover.
Okay, that's fair.
Like the AI uprising. Old white man emoji. Oh, is it specifically old white man emoji? Okay. I did notice it was extremely pale. Oh, hey, Tesla Ranger says the word viscosity is derived from the Latin viscum, for mistletoe. Wouldn't that be... No, I guess physical. Yeah, okay. Never mind.
But he has incredible vision. So they have arranged these eyeballs in order, and look what they tell the kids right here. You can better understand how the eye might have evolved if you picture a series of changes during the evolution of the eye. In other words, you have to imagine it. See, boys and girls, we'll arrange them in order. Can't you imagine how it could happen?
Hey, Bent.
Yeah.
You know what the Gospels are, right? You've heard of those works of literature?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, they're a series of events in the purported life of Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're reading the Gospels, do you have to imagine what's happening in the story as that's happening in order to understand the entire thing?
Yeah, you have to imagine it.
So do you think Kent would be okay with me saying then, therefore, what the Bible is actually asking you to do is just imagine Jesus and then therefore think that he exists? Do you think Kent would be okay with that conclusion?
That is equally as dumb as what Kent said, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And look, you might argue with me that the Gospels aren't reliable. I'm not here to talk about that. There are varying levels of reliability across the Bible in terms of historical narrative. I will say that. But it's not a good argument to say that because you have to imagine the narrative, that therefore it isn't true.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Savage Perpetual Emotion Lungs Cobra for $2 says, Kent has much in common with Eagles, apparently. Yes, in that he does not seem to be able to read very I mean, clearly he can read a little bit, but yeah, he strikes me as someone who's what they call functionally illiterate, which is to say, like, it's not technically that you can't read, but that you cannot read at the level that is generally assumed for an adult in your society, and you struggle with reading-based tasks. That's what it means to be functionally illiterate. So it's not like you can't read at all. You can probably read a stop sign, you can sign your name, and you can write a quick note to yourself or others, but like reading an instruction manual or following along with a novel or something like that, or understanding a scientific article, that's just completely beyond. And Kent does seem to be in that sort of like realm of literacy where he's functionally mostly illiterate.
Evolution only takes place in the imagination.
Or, you know, all those labs and natural settings. Oh, hey, look, it's more Mothra. Let's take a hint from Mothra.
Or in all of the eyes that are being referred to in this example.
Yeah, I mean, there's that too.
Because they're all realized, they're not imaginary eyes.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, you can find organisms with every kind of eye that is on the stepwise ladder that gets you to the complex eye, like a human or a squid or an eel has.
Never takes place in reality. You have to imagine how it might have happened. The Bible says very clearly, God formed the eye.
Okay, but I didn't watch that happen, so if I'm going to believe you, I'm going to have to imagine it happening, right?
That's just imagination.
Huh. Weird. It's almost like the fact that you have to put something into your mind that isn't right in front of you is not on its own a good argument against the truth of a claim. Almost like that. Rosamund Keller for $4.99 says, the eye is too complex argument infuriates me as we have extant examples of every form of eye from photoreceptors to our own eyes. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, it's very true. We have all the steps just right in front of us. We know that they're all viable. And because, as Darwin said way back in, I read from the 6th edition, but like, I happen to know that the quote is very little changed from the 1st edition. Way back when he published that book. Yet we have all of these examples. We know exactly how an eye can evolve. It's not a big problem. In fact, it's one of the easiest problems in evolution is to explain how an eye could evolve. We even actually know from before we get to the photosensitive patch because we happen to know that the opsin proteins that function to detect light in eyes are actually derived from somewhat simpler chemoreceptors that were loosely photosensitive, but were primarily used for actually detecting chemicals. And then they can easily mutate so that they primarily detect light, which they were already doing anyway, as sort of a coincidence. And boom, now you're off to the races with photoreception. So we even know how to get from no eye at all, no photosensitivity ability, right to having a photosensitive patch, or well, just photosensitivity at all, and then right into having eyeballs. Like, we have the whole thing all figured out. It's not an open question, really. Now, the exact path of any given eye in a particular lineage, yeah, okay, that might be an open question. But the idea of, like, can eyes evolve and how do they do it? That's been solved for longer than most things in evolutionary biology have. One of the first things we figured out. Darwin figured it out.
Psalm 94. I think God ought to get the glory. Did you know on the back of your eyeball is what's called the retina, the backside that receives the light?
I did know. Oh, wait, we had to ask the chat. Okay, we're going to start a Q&A, or no, start a poll. Did you know that at the back of your eye is the retina? Parenthesis, assuming you have at least one eye. Close parenthesis, question mark. Yes, no, and of course. Turtle. There you go. Because, look, I don't know who my audience is. Some of you might not have either eye, and that's okay. You know, there's lots of options for the visually impaired to watch YouTube and all of that. So I don't want to assume. Plus, if you don't have eyes, you are still welcome to listen in to this show.
Mhm.
I actually
so.
I do in fact have visually impaired viewers, or well, I guess in that case, listeners. And they are perfectly welcome here. And I also know that YouTube is not great with accessibility for people with who are visually impaired. And I wish they were better. I happen to know for a fact that the ability to use chat is very limited for the visually impaired, and it's nearly impossible for them to use the emoji, which I find disappointing. But I'm not in charge of any of that, so let's see. Kent must have misread it as evolution of the I with the letter I, the square root of -1. That's why he thinks it's imaginary, says Cookie's right. Yes, I love that. Shipfish
That makes
says,
so much more sense.
Shipfish, who's been a member for 22 months, says, tutu level check. Okay, if you guys want it, I will give you the tutu level check. So let me do a quick little bit of math here. We are 92.53 US away from the tutu.
That's doable.
It is doable, but it's not
it's gonna take some work.
likely.
That retina has 137 million light-sensitive cells.
There's another big number there for God. Also, I did a Dapper as a professional by failing to actually hit play. We'll take a drink for that. Oh, Borgenporia says Dapper Dinosaur is still awesome. Thank you.
In 1 square inch.
Okay.
How would you like...
Do you think Kent just doesn't know that cells are really, really small?
They're very small, and I think he should know that, but I've given him the benefit of the doubt when he doesn't deserve it before, so maybe I shouldn't this time.
I feel like you have a very first-hand understanding of just how tiny cells are.
Yeah, they're small.
Yeah, they're extremely tiny. And when he's like, there's 137,000 of them in a square inch, I feel like you might actually know better than me. Like, does that seem extraordinary to you?
No.
Yeah, that's just cells.
Because they're small.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if retinal cells are particularly small. No?
I don't know. I know they're long and thin.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if they're any bigger or smaller than other nearby cells.
Linda Peterson says, my stepdaughter's bio mom is blind, as is her current husband. Nothing wrong with that, and I get irritated with people who say they can't do anything for themselves. Yeah, you know what? Look, being blind is going to be a challenge for you, right? It's going to make certain things harder, but blind people can absolutely lead independent, full lives, and anyone who says that they can't has apparently just never met a blind person. And yeah, look, there are going to be struggles, and if you become blinded as an adult, it's going to be a much bigger struggle for you because you're not used to it. But yeah, blind people can do just about anything anyone else can do, short of driving vehicles. But yeah, so I really do wish YouTube were easier for the visually impaired. It seems like YouTube is just making it harder than it has to be in many cases. So, Alex Marco says he overlaps with the crowd that believes that bacteria don't exist. That's true, but he does believe that bacteria exist. But yeah, he does have a lot of overlap with people who are like, bacteria, that's just fake. Bacteria are actually just your body shedding toxins. Which, no, they're not. And
no, they're not.
YouTube, if you give me a community guideline strike for saying things that are true like that, I don't even know.
How would you like to be the electrician to wire up 137 million connections in 1 square inch?
I mean, it sounds like it's a really high-paying job, so it sounds fine to me. Also, that
I feel like there are more transistors on a computer chip than that.
Possibly, yeah. Although that's not done by just an electrician with like a soldering iron or something.
It's done by people, though.
It's usually done by robots directed by people.
People.
Yeah.
Like I said.
Remember the boxes we wired up for the duplication system? Trying to get in there, all the wires together.
Shipfish for $10 says, doing my part with a salute. I'm doing my part. Starship Troopers. Apparently there were people who didn't realize that was a satirical take on fascism and thought it was honestly advocating for fascism. Like, did you not notice that, like, the entire recruitment division for, like, the mobile infantry were all a bunch of, like, amputees who had horrible injuries? And, like, the guy who, like, signs up the main character has, like, a missing arm and leg, and he's like, the mobile infantry made me the man I am today. Like, come on, man. The entire thing is heavy satire. And there are people who are like, I don't like that movie because it promoted fascism. It's like, maybe you just didn't watch the movie I watched, because it was extremely critical of militarism and jingoism and fascism because of how horribly it ended up for every single character, bar like one.
I remember as a kid, my dad got me a kit to build a ham radio, shortwave radio to transmit as transmitter. And boy, all those little connections in there, and now they've miniaturized it much smaller. But even the fastest computer in the world, you get these big computers that have all these little microchips with these zillions of little tiny connections inside. The eyeballs got them beat by a long shot.
Oh, it doesn't.
No, that's not true at all.
It really doesn't.
Take a drink, yeah.
I just looked up 16 billion transistors on a chip in 2020. That's a lot more than 137 million.
Even for a camera, you can fit more photo sensors on a camera in the same space as the retina, and you have retinal cells. Like, you can get a higher resolution camera than the human eye in the space of a human eye, and get real-time video from it. That's just not true. Now, maybe when Kent said this, it was true, but that's one of the problems with comparing what's possible for evolution with what's possible for humans to do. And saying that if humans can't do it, then that means that evolution couldn't either. Because what humans can do is going to change. And humans have in numerous cases surpassed things that are possible for biological systems. At least that we've seen. So, yeah, and Fearmonger says, and the one main character it kind of worked out for is the one blatantly dressed up like a Nazi. It's true. Good old Neil Patrick Harris. Dressed up in, like, just what looks just like an SS uniform, but without the specific insignia. Oh man, that movie was... It's unappreciatedly brilliant, is what it is. It's a great satire about all that stuff that I mentioned, and I just hate it that people don't realize that that's what's happening. I mean, it's got those obvious, ridiculous propaganda videos, like the kids stomping on cockroaches as an example of how we're going to beat the bugs. Like, and also, if you read the subtext of the movie, this entire war starts when a bunch of people settle on a planet already inhabited by the bugs. And the bugs are like, why is there an alien invasion on our planet? That's not okay. Like, sorry, I don't want to turn this into, like, a retrospective on Starship Troopers, but I just hate the degree to which people misunderstand that movie.
And they think it happened by chance.
Kent, evolution is not just a chance process, right? It's a chance plus non-chance elements. Selection isn't chance-based. Like, okay, we're going to do an example. I have some dice because I'm a giant nerd who plays tabletop role-playing games, right? So I always have within reach of me at my desk a giant bag full of dice. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take some six-sided dice, which is the minority of my dice I'll grant you. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That should be enough. Okay, I'm going to take 5 dice. Okay. Now, what are the chances of rolling a 6 on a 5-sided die? Or sorry, 6-sided die. I know.
1 in 6.
1 in 6. What is the chance of rolling 2 6s on 2 6-sided dice in the same roll?
1 in 36.
Yep. So you just keep increasing the power, right? So the chance of me getting 6 6s on these 5 dice should be 1 in 6 to the 5th power, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yes.
if I check 6 to the 5th power, that's 1 in 7,766. Which means that on average, if I roll these 5 dice 7,776 times, I should get all 6s on average about once. But here's what I'm going to actually do. I'm going to roll these dice, and every time I roll a 6, I'm just going to leave that die there. We're going to see how many rolls it takes me. I'll bet it's going to be a lot fewer than 7,000.
I hope so.
All right, so here's my first roll. No 6s. I got a 2, a 4, a 4, a 3, and a 5. Whoop. That rolled off. Okay, we got a 6, a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 3. So that's my second roll. That's 1 6. Here's my third roll. No 6s. We got a 3, 1, 1, 5. Here's my fourth roll. No 6s. Fifth roll. Oh, we got a 6. Okay, so here's my seventh roll. No. Eighth roll. No. Ninth roll. There's another 6. 10. Another 6. 11. Nope, that's a 4. 12. I dropped the die. It went on the floor. But it rolled a 4 on the floor. So, what number is this? 12? Yeah, we'll go 12. 3, 12, there's a 6. So, like 13 or so rolls it took for me to get all 6s. That's because there's a selection criterion acting on the otherwise random thing, which is why I was able to get all 5 6s in fewer than 20 rolls instead of well over 7,000 rolls. How is rolling dice within his dino arms, says Borgenporia? I mean, you just pick them up and you roll them. Plus, I mean, I can have my butler do it.
That's true.
It's a good thing I didn't use my Star Trek Adventures challenge dice because those don't even have 6s on them. Plus, some of them are 3D printed with different symbols on them other than the Federation Delta and the Klingon trifoil symbol. Because I made them in Blender and I printed them, and I'm so happy about that.
If you think about the human eye, that can not only, it can focus very quickly on different objects. I mean,
yeah, that's true. Although it can't focus as quickly as a camera doing like a, snap focus change, but okay.
What if you had a camera that could focus that quickly from one object to another?
Christine V says, I'm a craps dealer at a casino. You should hear my players with the confirmation bias-based superstitions they spout off like it's the truth of Pope Darwin. Oh, I'm sure, man. Gamblers are so superstitious, and like none of it's true. Also, Robert Madewell, I didn't read this. Member for 33 months says Yahtzee, and yeah, Yahtzee is another game where you can, like, there's skill involved, but there's also chance involved, right? Knowing which dice to pick up and re-roll and what to go for on your scorecard for Yahtzee is a skill that you can determine based on your understanding of the chances of the die rolls. Because remember, you can always like choose which dice to pick up and re-roll and which section of your scorecard you want to go for to fill in for this particular round. And yeah, like chance plus selection means that you can get things pretty quickly, even in a somewhat stochastic environment.
This camera Andrew has back here is automatic focus, but
that is the first time I've ever heard Kent Hovind name his other son that he normally doesn't talk about. Kent Andrew. Remember last time we speculated that Kent Andrew was the one behind the camera?
Mm-hmm.
And he just said it. And that is the only time I've ever heard him even say the name of that son.
If I stuck something up in front of the camera 6 inches away right now, it would take a fraction of a second to focus.
Depends on the camera. If it has a quick manual focus, which this camera probably doesn't, but if it did, then you could probably focus on it much faster. Okay.
Yeah, your eye can do it almost instantly. It adjusts for colors, more colors than any camera can ever pick up. Your eye.
That's also not true. You can make cameras that can actually pick up more colors than the human eye. In fact, actually, most digital cameras do pick up more colors. Here's a cool experiment. You can get your phone camera, right, and point your remote control for your TV at the sensor for your camera, and press buttons on your remote control. You will see the camera light up because your camera can actually detect the UV signal that the remote is sending out to connect to your TV. Your phone camera can detect a larger spectrum of the light than your eyes can.
I can tell. You can hold up two different.
Tessa Ranger says, if you 3D print dice, how do you know how fair they are? So they have a consistent makeup the whole way through, and all of these symbols on them are very thinly etched in, which means, are they completely fair? I mean, probably not 100%, but like they're not going to be meaningfully less fair than the dice that are supplied from the game company that makes Star Trek Adventure. So, in case anyone is wondering, I have Ferengi dice and Tholian dice. I have the Tholian Assembly symbol and the Ferengi Alliance symbol on them. I also gave Bent some Romulan Empire dice. And at least the Ferengi and the Tholian dice are actually available for anyone publicly on my Patreon. You can just get the STL file and print them yourself. You don't even have to join the Patreon. I think you might have to join it as a free member, actually. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But yeah, they're free. You don't have to pay me a single dime, and you can just get them if you want them.
20 different colors of white.
Oh, yep. Tussle Ranger points out it's infrared, not ultraviolet. Thank you.
I mean, go to the store and see how many colors of blue and white there are.
Yeah, and a lot of them will be picked up on a good camera. Now, the thing is, look, in modern digital, photography and whatnot, usually crush down the colors to save on file space. If you get the raw files, then that full color data is in there. And there are different formats that you can use to save that full color data, and it's going to have a huge color depth, right? Like most people are used to like saving things as PNGs or as JPEGs. And that has a pretty limited color depth, right? It's like usually a 16-bit color, no, not 16-bit, but 16-byte color depth. That's tiny. You can get TIFFs and other image formats, raw files that have huge amounts of color depth. The fact that normally you guys are storing things where the colors can be effectively entered with a hex code doesn't mean that that's how digital cameras work. They actually contain way more color data. And if you get high-end image editing software that can actually take those raw images and you can use the full color depth in your image editing before you crunch it down to some file format that most computers are used to. So the best option I have for this is that Kent just doesn't know what raw camera file, what raw picture files from a camera are actually storing. And then he's just ignorant about this. But it's just not true that cameras can't pick up as many, if not more, colors than your eyes can. They absolutely can. 24-bit, 3-byte, 24-bit. Yeah, okay, 16. Yeah, okay, there you go. Tesla range. I couldn't remember all the things. I just remembered hex codes and how many more digits it takes up when you have like a 32 versus a 16 color depth or whatever.
How many shades of these colors? And your
Oh, Carrie Bronson from $5 says, assuming Hell is real, I sincerely believe that Kent's fate will be to read all these super chats and realize people paid money just to mock him. That would be a great hell for Kent Hovind. And yeah, if hell is if hell is a real thing, I do hope that is one of the things that Kent Hovind experiences there, because that would be pretty hilarious.
eye can see all this, more than any camera can see. And it adjusts for light, the light intensity automatically, just bang, instantly.
I mean, cameras can do that too. I don't know what you're talking about. Also,
I feel like Kent doesn't know anything about cameras.
Yeah, he doesn't know anything about anything, right?
That's true.
Well, it's pretty amazing the way it was designed. The one atheist wrote me a letter and said, no, he called me. I was sitting in the office. He called. He said, Hovind, you're so stupid.
I do not believe that that's how this guy opened up this conversation.
No.
I don't know how you can believe in creation. I said, what's my other choice? He said, evolution. I said, what makes you believe in evolution? He said, well, the human eyeball is designed backwards. He said, it's built backwards. It can't.
Yeah, he probably didn't say designed backwards.
Can't have been designed. I said, what are you talking about? He said, the light comes into your eye, and it has to go, there's a layer of blood vessels in front of the retina. You can see the blood vessels on the top there. The light goes through those blood vessels before it strikes the retina, which allows you to see what you're looking at. I said, yeah, I knew about that. I taught biology.
I'm just going to take a drink for that part of the story. Definitely didn't happen. Kent has never meaningfully taught biology because he can't, because he doesn't know biology. It's like me saying, oh yeah, I know, I taught Chinese philosophy. I don't know a damn thing about Chinese philosophy, so I can't teach it. DM artificially selected ceratopsian wing for $2 says, remember, Kent's camera has been a potato since 97. Okay, that's fair.
Maybe.
Yeah, actually, what is it? Oh yeah, it's Remnant 2. I have Remnant 2, and one of the presets for graphics quality is literally called potato. It has ultra, high, medium, low, and potato.
Nice.
Yeah, and what potato mostly does is just disable virtually all lighting effects. So.
He said, well, those blood vessels block out some of the light. I said, yeah. He said, well, that's a poor design. He said, the octopus has a much better eye because their blood vessels are behind the retina. Now,
That's true.
he's right. Octopus blood vessels are behind the retina. Human blood vessels are in front of the retina. He's absolutely right.
Take a drink.
And he says that proves that neither one are designed because...
I don't think that's his conclusion. I think his actual point, if this is a real conversation, was that this demonstrates suboptimal design, therefore making it less likely that the human eye had a specific designer who had perfect knowledge and ability, which is what Kent thinks is true of the intelligent design.
It's backwards. I said, well, sir, listen, let me explain something to you. We live in the air. Air does not stop UV light very well, ultraviolet light.
You know, Bent,
Yeah.
diatomic oxygen, you know what that is, right?
O2.
Yeah. Are you aware of what it's called when an oxygen molecule actually has 3 oxygen atoms instead of 2?
O3.
Yeah, but do you know what the common name for that chemical is?
Not off the top of my head. Is it ozone?
It is ozone.
I did know it, yes.
Do you know what ozone blocks a lot of?
Ultraviolet light?
Yup. Just wanted to put that out there. In fact, air blocks most of the UV light from the sun. Not all.
UV light will burn your retina.
I mean, yeah, if there's enough of it and it's high enough frequency, then yeah.
That's why you don't shine lasers in kids' eyes. That's why you don't stand there and stare at the sun for 30 minutes.
Actually, those would both be problems even if you didn't have UV lasers and the sun weren't high in UV light, because just the brightness in the visible spectrum is more than enough. By the way, did you know that at the back of your eye is a retina, assuming you have at least one eye? Question mark. Yes, 65%. Turtle, 31%. No, only 3% out of 83 votes. All right, we're going to get to the end of his point here because I don't want to stop in the middle of this point. So we might go slightly over, and then we're going to wrap up. And it'll also mean that we have a little bit more time if you guys want a tutu.
UV light will burn your retina. I said octopus live in the water. Now, water stops ultraviolet light.
Okay.
That's why as you go deeper and deeper, the water seems to change colors.
That's not why. That's because of the scattering of the light and also just the blocking of general light. Because remember, you can't actually see UV light normally unless you have a problem with your eyes. Like, actually, I believe, Bent, can't your mom see a little bit of UV light?
Not that I know of.
I thought you said that she could because she could see some of the UV emission stuff through that telescope.
That doesn't sound familiar to me.
Yeah, well, maybe. But yeah, your retina actually can detect some amount of UV light, but it's usually blocked out by like your eye lens. But if you have problems with your eye, then yeah, you can in fact get a little bit of UV in there.
Only the blue light penetrates. Different
No, the blue light scatters, which then creates a blue sort of haze overall, but whatever.
frequencies won't penetrate at different depths. As you go down, it changes color. Till pretty soon, of course, black. Real deep, only the very, very dark blue light will penetrate. Octopus live way down deep. They don't need the blood vessels in front. They're not getting any UV light.
Okay, so not only is it not true that octopus don't get any UV light, and in fact you can get a sunburn underwater, in case anyone's wondering, if Kent is right that this difference is a matter of living on land or underwater, and that these animals are intelligently designed, then two things should follow. Snails have eyes, and in fact have camera-like eyes. They should have the human type arrangement with the blood vessels on top. Also, Roasting Keller from 999 says, "Don't stare into the sun. Wear a tutu." What am I even seeing? People are showing me emojis that I don't even know what they are.
Ballet shoes.
Ballet shoes. Okay, ballet shoes. So the snail should have the human arrangement, right, where there's blood vessels on top and the retina underneath the blood vessels. And whales, who primarily live underwater, like octopus, should have the octopus-style eye, right? Where the blood vessels are behind the cells in the retina that actually receive the light, right? Like, this would make sense. Because the idea is that an intelligent designer decided which side to put the blood vessels on based on whether you live inland or underwater. But here's the thing. Evolution predicts the opposite. Because according to evolution, these are contingent aspects of evolution, An octopus and snails, being both mollusks that shared a common ancestor with an eye that had a particular wiring, should have the same kind of ordering. So they should both have either the retina, then the blood vessels underneath, or they should both have the blood vessels, then the retina. And humans and whales should also have the same eyes. So, does anyone want to take a wild guess as to whether or not human and whale eyes match, and whether or not snail and octopus eyes match?
I guess that they do match.
Yep, in both cases they match. Which means that the intelligent designer did not decide which way to put these blood vessels versus the retina on the basis of whether the organism lived on land or in the sea. And yes, I know there are sea snails. We're talking about land snails in this case. So don't at me at like, well, actually, Dapper, there are many snail species that live under the ocean. Yeah, I know. I am aware. Talking about terrestrial snails. So, yeah, that right there. Kent makes a testable claim. We can test it. Oh, oops. Falsified his claim. Sorry, Kent. This is not well explained by intelligent design. We're going to see if he gets a little bit more into this, and then if he start making another claim, we're just going to end it there.
So they're designed for the water, and we're designed for the air.
I guess whales are designed for the air, and land snails are designed for the water. Weird choice, God. Weird choice.
Because blood vessels block out UV light.
Which, I mean, sure, they block out a little bit of UV light, but not meaningfully, right? Like, what's the 10th thickness for water for UV? UV, light, water, 10th thickness. Let's see. Depth penetration of different UV sources. No, that's sources. Come on. Okay, so water, UV, 10th thickness. All right, that'll work better. Let's see. I do not know what the 10th thickness is. It is not coming up when I type that in. That is unfortunate. Huh. Well, anyway, 10 thickness, in case you guys are wondering, is a concept where a certain thickness of material is needed to block 1/10 of a particular kind of radiation, right? So it's how we can determine how much shielding you need from different kinds of radiation. Water has a relatively low 10th thickness for virtually every kind of radiation except for alpha radiation, which is not what UV rays are. Alpha particles are basically helium nuclei. They're getting kicked out of things. Whereas things like, your skin has a higher thickness, 10 thickness, for virtually everything. And things like metal have an even higher 10 thickness. Or actually, technically lower, right? Because it's the smaller the number, the better shielding it is. So, sorry about that. Rosana Keller for 199 says, Kent pretends corneas can't burn under UV light. I'm not sure that I would agree that he would say that doesn't work. I think he would probably say that, yeah, your cornea would be affected by that too, but I don't actually know. All right, so a little bit more, and we're going to wrap it up.
I said, if you want to swap eyes with an octopus, you go ahead, but you'll be blind in a few days.
You won't.
No.
I said, do you have any other dumb questions? He said,
That sounds plausible for Kent.
no, that was it. No, click. I get that all the time.
Okay, that's a story that didn't happen. We're just going to take a drink. All right, guys. Doesn't look like we made the tutu, but that's okay because we got close. Now, Bent, do you have anything to tell people about that's coming up?
Nothing's coming up.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to tell people about just generally?
Well, yeah, we plugged it already, but my Patreon and my Amazon wish list.
And that's a Patreon.
And then there's music, too.
That Patreon is primarily for the music, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And those are all linked in the description below.
Yes, they are.
Feel free to click away.
Also, someone did, in fact, get the muddler and the cocktail spoon. So, awesome.
Nice.
Thank you very much to whoever did that. I do appreciate it. Okay, so let's take a look at what is coming up on the channel. So, today is Tuesday. It's also St. Valentine's Day. All right, everybody. So, quick thing on St. Valentine. St. Valentine is a purported martyr under one of the Roman persecutions who was killed in the Roman Colosseum. And for some reason, and I don't know the full story, but yeah, it's become a celebration of romantic love. But yeah, Valentine's Day is in fact Saint Valentine's Day, and he is one of those. Basically, he's found on one of those lists of martyrs from Roman persecutions for whom we just have a name, and then later hagiographic works were written about him that were basically just made up. So the actual core of the story that is probably true is that there probably was a guy named Valentine who was a Christian who was killed under one of the various Roman persecutions for failing to denounce his Christianity and offer a sacrifice to the emperor in the cult of the. So,
How romantic.
yeah. There's nothing that says romance like a guy getting killed in the Colosseum. All right. On Thursday, which will be part of Western Lent, but not any holiday that I'm aware of, we will be releasing Misapplying Math Means Evolution is Wrong, David Gottlieb, Incoherent Shouty Moron, Part 2 of 3. That'll be at noon my time, which is Mountain Standard, which means it'll be at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is, again, the 15th. That is this Thursday. Then on Saturday, I will be doing, let's see, that's Young Earth equals Flat Earth? At least that's the current plan. Which is a Dapper Reacts. I found a Flat Earth thing we're going to take a look at. The actual video is extremely long, and I cannot guarantee that we're going to go through all of it over the course of various Dapper React streams. We might only get 1 or 2 shows out of it, depending on just how cringy it is. But basically, my goal for this is to compare the thought processes that lead to Flat Earth belief to the thought processes that lead to Young Earth belief, because I believe that they are very, very similar. Tesla Ranger says search under attention coefficient. Yeah, it's the wrap up time. It's too late, but that is a good idea. I would do that if we were still going to be keeping on. And then on the next Tuesday, the current plan, which Maddie has already acknowledged and agreed with, is that we will be doing Climbing Mount Stupid, Matt with Maddie number 26 on next Tuesday. And also, we just got Strawberry Visible Taxidermic Louvain gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. They went to Shazammy Whammy, Twitch, Unduloid, EG, and Melly. Thank you very much. Let's take 5 drinks for that. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Olivia Williams, who's been a member for 21 months and is at the tetrapod level, says, oh, still going with a Mothra, so we'll take a drink from Mothra. And yes, we are. And we're also under 40 away. But unfortunately, it is also time to get out of here. So, with that being said, I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your week, a safe rest of your week. And also remember, if you've been drinking with us, don't go out there and operate any heavy machinery or drive cars or text your ex. A really bad idea. If you are interested and you have access to my Discord server, we will be watching some Power Rangers after this. It is Power Rangers Wild Force. And I believe the Forever Red episode is coming up today. So, one of the great episodes. Borg Emporia says, when will Silence Bitch Made timer end? I hope to stops being a bitch soon. I don't expect him to stop being bitch made, but I do plan to take it away after it reaches the 1 year point, and we have a little bit of a celebration stream for that. We're going to mark the occasion, basically, the anniversary of Sal being bitch made. I haven't decided if it's going to be on the 366th day, or if I'm going to divide, the 365.25th day, because it is a leap year, which makes it a little weird. So, yeah, I don't know. If you have, strong feelings about that, let me know in the comments, or, DM me on Discord or something like that, and let me know, Dapper, if it's not 366 days, I'm going to leave the channel. I'm going to unsubscribe. Or no, Dapper, I really love the 365.25. That's great. Keep that up. Let me know. But with that, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the support, all the views, all the likes. And we're going to get out of here. I will talk to you all on Thursday, because you're all going to be here for the premiere. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Hovind, Phil Guevara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Jenny5252, Elron Teller, Horseland and Noel, Eddie McCoy, Ita V, and Strawberry Vein. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team,
There's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.